It's Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. I'm Jackson Bird. Today, scientists created a microcomputer powered by photosynthetic algae, plus a smart pacifier that could monitor the health of premature babies in the NICU. And Domino's has teamed up with the Hawkins National Laboratory for a new app that lets you order pizza with your mind. Here's some cool stuff for your ride home. Our home offices may all one day look like the lair of supervillains if this latest experiment takes off. Scientists at the University of Cambridge successfully powered a low-energy computer chip for 6 months using photosynthetic algae. The small, semi-transparent unit seriously does look like something out of a sci-fi movie with its neon green contents swirling around. Quoting The Verge, researchers sealed a colony of cyanobacteria, commonly known as blue-green algae, inside a metal enclosure the size of a AA battery. The unit was then left on a windowsill, according to New Scientist, where the algae photosynthesized, generating a tiny current of electricity that powered an ARM Cortex-M0 Plus chip. The algae-powered ARM chip was used to carry out very basic calculations, during which it consumed a tiny 0.3 microwatts an hour, reports New Scientist. Although the energy usage of normal computers varies based on factors like workload and age, this is a sliver of the electricity needed to run an average PC. If a normal desktop computer consumes, say, 100 watts of power an hour, you would need roughly 333 million algae batteries to run it. End quote. Alright, so maybe not great for powering our maxed out supervillain lab computers, let alone our everyday PCs, but the researchers say the algae could be a great option for smaller devices in the Internet of Things. They say compared to batteries or solar power, the algae has a smaller footprint and won't run down over time because it's using light continually as the energy source. So maybe an Alexa with a little photosynthetic algae unit tucked into its side. The Cambridge researchers, though admitting this was small-scale, were pleased with the results. They noted that the algae didn't need feeding and was able to continue powering the computer chip overnight, using energy it had stored up during the daylight hours. Lead author Dr. Paolo Bombelli said in a press statement, quote, "We were impressed by how consistently the system worked over a long period of time. We thought it might stop after a few weeks, but it just kept going." End quote. And indeed, IGN notes that the chip kept going for 6 additional months after the experiment concluded. And even though I was kind of joking with the visual of all of our home offices surrounded by canisters of algae making us look like cartoon supervillains, I'm not completely joking. Using algae for energy is part of a growing field called biophotovoltaics, and there are experiments and pilot programs being run in all sorts of directions right now. For example, a while back I told you about Young Henry's Brewing in Australia that reduces their CO2 emissions from the fermentation process by capturing that CO2 and feeding it into a bioreactor that houses microalgae. They're running that project and other sustainability efforts in partnership with the University of Technology Sydney Climate Change Cluster and explain, quote, "Algae is naturally occurring in the environment and forms a very important part of all aquatic food webs and ecosystems. There are 2 main types of algae, macroalgae, which consists of kelps and seaweeds, and microalgae, which are tiny microscopic plants that can grow both in fresh and salt water. The glowing bioreactors look like a sci-fi installation housed in amongst our brewery equipment, with each milliliter containing roughly 5 million microalgae cells, or individual organisms. Research into algae reveals that it can pretty much save the world. The photosynthesis effectiveness is so strong that algae actually produces more than 50% of the world's oxygen. That's every second breath you take being powered by the likes of humble kelp, spirulina, and nori. In addition, the algae that's grown from sucking up all that CO2 can go on to have another life and be used in a bunch of products like food or even bioplastics. And for a little bit of added context here, the 400-liter bioreactor installed in Young Henry's Newtown Brewery produces as much oxygen as 1 hectare of Australian forest. End quote. Now, The Verge further explains biophotovoltaics as, quote, "The aim of the field is to harness the power generated by biological microorganisms that naturally convert light into electricity through photosynthesis. Although this process is extremely inefficient, with plants absorbing only 0.25% of the energy of sunlight compared to 20% absorbed in solar panels, advocates say biophotovoltaic energy systems could be cheap to produce and environmentally friendly. They imagine that in the future, giant lily pads that float on water could be coated in algae to act as mobile power stations alongside offshore wind farms." End quote. And apart from how cool I think our world would look with microalgae bioreactors and batteries everywhere, I'm also just really fascinated by the potential here. More investment in microalgae, please. Alright, so when you first hear the words smart pacifier, you might think, come on, the Internet of Things has gone too far. Infants don't need smart devices. Which, absolutely fair. But this new bioelectronic pacifier developed by scientists at Washington State University is designed for use in the hospital, specifically for babies in the Newborn Intensive Care Unit, or NICU. Babies in the NICU typically undergo about 2 blood draws a day to monitor their electrolytes and other vitals. Not a fun experience for anyone, but particularly tough on such a new and tiny human. The blood draw can also leave gaps in time since it's done just twice a day and doesn't leave room for continuous monitoring. And while some methods have been tested that use newborns' saliva instead of drawing blood, the devices for that so far haven't quite worked out, often being too clunky for the delicate procedure. So enter the smart pacifier. Based on commercially available pacifiers, it's able to provide continuous monitoring of sodium and potassium ion levels and alert healthcare workers if the baby becomes dehydrated, a particularly big concern for premature infants. Quoting Science Daily, "The researchers created a system that samples a baby's saliva through microfluidic channels. Whenever the baby has the pacifier in their mouth, saliva is naturally attracted to these channels, so the device doesn't require any kind of pumping system. The channels have small sensors inside that measure the sodium and potassium ion concentrations in the saliva. Then this data is relayed wirelessly using Bluetooth to the caregiver." End quote. From initial tests, the results from the smart pacifier were comparable to those received from blood draws, with, of course, the big advantage that no needles had to be involved. Co-author Jong-Hoon Kim says the next step is fine-tuning the product to be more affordable and testing it on a broader sample, with the ultimate goal being reducing the number of wires and other disruptions that weigh down premature babies in the NICU. Which is all very, very cool and good, but how do we develop an adult equivalent so I can stop getting my blood drawn? Like, get me a vape that checks my vitals. That's the future there. Domino's Pizza has always been a little weird, a company never afraid to take big bets. They're the ones who first started a 30-minute delivery or it's free guarantee, and then invented a supremely weird mascot called the Noid to advertise the offer. In recent years, they've experimented with delivery robots, drones, and self-driving cars, and back in 2011, when they were facing a riptide of bad press due to health and safety accusations and a general sense that their pizza just kinda sucked, they decided to go with a fully transparent strategy. They broadcast every comment they got on their website live in Times Square for a month. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And those comments were left on Domino's famous pizza tracker, which launched in 2008, itself hailed as a revolution in food delivery. It was among the best online ordering systems at the time, boosted sales for the company, and set a new standard for ordering systems to come. Of course, it wasn't the first online pizza ordering system. That honor goes to Pizza Hut's PizzaNet, all the way back in 1994. A collaboration between Pizza Hut and a startup called the Santa Cruz operation, the site enabled anyone with access to Mosaic to place an order for pizza, although customers did get a follow-up call from their local Pizza Hut to make sure that it wasn't a prank order before they got their delivery. PizzaNet didn't exactly take off, and Pizza Hut wouldn't have a more official online ordering system until 2001, but PizzaNet was an important step forward in early online commerce. And though it's contested, Pizza Hut does get to claim that the first thing ever bought and sold online was one of their pizzas. But nonetheless, Domino's has been more of a standout in online ordering over the last decade especially. I mean, it was thanks to Domino's Pizza Tracker and the curious boredom of a comedy blogger, who would later go on to co-create Young Sheldon, that we have the none pizza with left beef meme. What would we be as a society without none pizza with left beef? And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, see the brief history of that meme that I did last October, link in the show notes. But the point is, Domino's has always been a little cutting edge. Some think pieces over the years have remarked on the company's shift from a food company to a tech company, which is probably the best vote of confidence Domino's could get for surviving our everything is deliverable era. Pizza companies are kind of floundering right now, as Grubhub, Uber Eats, and the like, companies that are absolutely tech first and not food companies at all, make it easy for people to get any food delivered. So the big thing that helped pizza stand out, the fact that in many places it was the only food you could get delivered, is all but gone. But Domino's, well, according to some experts, they minted themselves as a tech-forward company back during their great rebrand of 2010-ish. So, of any of the pizza companies, Domino's will probably be okay. And they are continuing to strut their stuff as a weirdo brand utilizing the latest in technology, even if that technology doesn't exist yet, with their latest app, Domino's Mind Ordering. The app dropped yesterday alongside a video featuring Lucas and Dustin from Stranger Things. Yes, the entire thing is a brand integration for the latest season of Stranger Things, the first half of which drops next Friday the 27th, but it is still pretty cool. The video shows off all of Domino's old 80s branding after a creepy scene at Hawkins National Laboratory in which scientists are trying to train children to order pizza with their minds. But if you place a mind order through Domino's right now, you can get a limited edition retro box, complete with an old ad for the Noid on it. Now, the app itself is an audio-guided immersive experience that teaches you how to control objects with your mind. It uses facial recognition, so you control the app by making small head movements. Or at least that's what the website and reviews say. The facial recognition part only works on newer phones, iPhone 10 and up, Pixel 5 to 6. So my old iPhone 8 not only crashed a dozen times while trying to use it, but also got an amended experience where you just tap buttons instead of controlling it with facial gestures. And for a full list of phones that it is compatible with, check out the FAQ on the linked website. Honestly, though, it was still kind of cool even without the facial gestures. It has a really cool design, and you can use it to actually order a pizza or just walk through it for fun. And besides the pizza box that you use to order, there are other objects that you can interact with, some of which may reveal Easter eggs for the upcoming season of Stranger Things. And if the app is still up next week, I might just have to use it to order a pizza when I watch Volume 1 of Stranger Things Season 4. They totally got me with this brand integration. FYI, for folks in the US, the federal government has just booted up covidtests.org again, meaning there is a third round of free at-home tests available for households. And this time, you'll get 8 free tests when you sign up, and please do. Even if you feel like you're someone maybe who can afford tests, you think you want to save these free ones for people who need them, sign up to get your free tests anyways, and then maybe donate those if you feel like it, because according to NPR, government officials have said one reason they've been holding back on not sending out as many tests as would actually be helpful is that they are waiting to see if demand is actually there. So show them that demand is there. It's kind of like when your office is trying to blow the budget at the end of the quarter so the budget doesn't get reduced next quarter. I'm not saying at-home tests are the only thing the government or we should be doing as COVID edges into high-risk levels across the country, but it's at least one small thing that we can take advantage of right now. And switching gears, just a heads up for Marvel fans who are also data nerds. Consequence has just kicked off their Marvel Pop Culture Week, in which they will be, quote, breaking down the pop culture of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, including an exhaustive survey of every reference and allusion to other media properties, the ultimate playlist of every song used in the MCU, and more. End quote. With just 3 articles posted at the time of recording, there have already been flowcharts, there have been pie graphs, there has been meta-analysis about why Batman and Superman can be referenced in the MCU. It's pretty great so far. In addition to raw numbers like the exact number of pop culture references in every single MCU film and TV show, Consequence is also providing interesting commentary, like this, quote, "While this wasn't necessarily the case when Iron Man premiered in 2008, the characters who populate the MCU now live in a very different universe than present-day Earth. Earth 616, as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness just officially defined it, is a planet where the existence of aliens is commonly accepted. Superheroes of all types are considered just another type of celebrity, and everyone is still coping with the trauma associated with half the population vanishing for 5 years. Much like big events like 9/11 and the pandemic have affected pop culture on our Earth, it's only rational to assume that the 2012 attack on New York and the blip would affect what Hawkeye sees when he turns on his television." End quote. It's good stuff so far, so bookmark Consequences Marvel Pop Culture Week, link in the show notes if that's your kind of thing. But that is it from me for today. This show was produced by Ride Home Media. I'm Jackson Bird, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.